The Flash movie is now out, zooming its way to one of the lowest box office draws in DC history with $55.1 million opening weekend. That's way too low. It's lower than Black Adam. It's right next to Shazam 2's $30 million. That movie was released just over 3 months ago and everyone forgot about it. That's half of what they needed it to be. It's even lower than the most conservative estimates that says it's going to be around $70 million with a divisive 66% Rotten Tomato rating and an even worse cinema score of B. It's Panic City for Warner Brothers right now.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
To be fair, The Flash has been in developmental hell for almost a decade. Technically, they wanted to make a Flash movie in the 80s, but the DCEU iteration of The Flash was announced way back in 2014. And within that 9-year period, a lot has happened. We've got a Batman v Superman movie, 2 Wonder Woman movies, 2 Suicide Squad movies, 2 versions of the Justice League, 2 Shazam movies, one of which vanished from the zeitgeist after about 2 minutes, 1 great Joker movie, 1 Batman movie that isn't Ben Affleck, and 1 Black Adam flop. And all throughout that time, the Flash movie has gone through as many directors and would-be directors until they finally settled on its director Andy Muschietti in 2019. Bringing with him the Birds of Prey writer Christina Hodson, which in hindsight might probably be a hint to what this movie's gonna be. Then Gunn and Safran came in as the new heads of DC that led to a lot of changes to the movie in favor of the Gunverse, not to mention the controversy surrounding its main actor, Ezra Miller. So after almost 10 years, 6 directors, multiple rewrites, multiple reshoots, and what I assume to be a shit ton of post-production work, we finally get The Flash. And after watching the film, I can tell you a couple of things right off the bat. Is it the absolute greatest superhero movie of all time that some critics made out to be? No. Is it better than most superhero movies now, like Black Adam, Shazam 2, and every other Disney Marvel movie? Yeah. I would even go as far to say this movie, despite all its problems that we'll get into in this review, is a lot of fun. Is this a Batman movie, as the marketing suggests? That's a no. This is very much a Flash movie. In any case, the box office disaster was certainly in part coming out the same month as another popular and better multiverse movie, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And as far as multiverse movies go, a lot of people are really tired of them, especially when it's already been properly done multiple times. Into the Spider-Verse, No Way Home, and now Across the Spider-Verse. And for those of you wondering how it compares to Spider-Man No Way Home, it doesn't. But that isn't to say The Flash is a bad movie. Actually, a lot of people love this movie. Flash learns he can travel back in time and change the events of his past. He goes back in time to save his mom. In doing so, he gets in another reality with another version of himself. No metahumans, no Justice League, and the only person he can turn to is Michael Keaton's Batman, who eventually gets out of retirement to help rescue an imprisoned Kryptonian who isn't Kal-El, Supergirl, played by Sasha Calle. But the reality is, it's a bit unfortunate that the biggest problem with The Flash is The Flash. There's a current timeline Barry and a slightly younger Barry that's supposed to be less annoying, but kinda took it a little too far in my opinion. But it isn't entirely his fault. This movie tried to counter the problem that most people had from his very first appearance in Justice League by having that other Barry dial it all the way up to 11. And while Miller did a commendable job juxtaposing his character on screen, it was fairly difficult to tell at times when there's an obvious deep fakery taking place. But when he's not playing jokes, those truly intimate moments were effective, and that's a testament to Miller's acting. Keep in mind, this is the first solo Flash movie, and while we do get his origin in a very different way, it shouldn't have been loosely adapted from Flashpoint to begin with. Like Justice League, this should have been something to build up to. This should have been the final movie that bookends a series of Flash movies. And how can you make a Flash movie without showcasing the best rogues gallery next to Batman's? Captain Cold, Mirror Master, Captain Boomerang, and Gorilla Grodd, just to name a few. And one major downside of telling the story this way is that it undercuts the introduction of Flash nemesis, Reverse Flash. In my opinion, it's one of the most interesting characters in the Flash mythos. Yes, it has a lot of family drama, just like every other superhero movie out there. But getting to the other characters now, starting with probably the second best reason for seeing this movie, Ben Affleck's Batman, who puts in a really good, really short Batman action sequence, and then he batarangs out of DC forever.
Yeah. Something is definitely bleeding.
About an hour into the movie, after we get well into the double feature of Ezra Miller and his gang of forgettable side characters, we finally get to see the actual draw of the film, Michael Keaton's Batman. And I'm not gonna lie, his stuff was really good. I enjoyed every bit of it. Bat toys look awesome. Great to see the Batmobile, proper Batcave, the Bat symbol, Wayne Manor pretty much look the same. The Batplane in particular was really badass. Keaton Batman here was kicking ass like you wouldn't believe. One particular Batarang scene was so good, I was all smiles. Something that Tim Burton couldn't do over 30 years ago. But you'd be disappointed in the fact that despite what the marketing tried to tell you, Michael Keaton in the Batsuit wasn't in the movie all that much. As good as he wasn't in the film as much as he deserved. If you've seen the trailers, then you've probably seen 80% of his scenes. There are good moments from Michael Keaton, but there are times that felt like he was just there to repeat his lines from Batman 89, but still he was the absolute best thing in the film. But despite all of the Bat action, it wasn't enough to make the movie that good. In fact, I would argue that we should have gotten a solo Elseworlds Keaton movie and it would have crushed in the box office.
What are you? I'm Batman.
And when it comes to Sasha Calle's Supergirl, who I thought is gonna be the worst thing in this movie, but turns out she's totally great. I liked her iteration of Supergirl. She wasn't annoying or obnoxious. Yes, they tried to hide her looks with an Ezra Miller haircut, but she was still great in the movie. The other Kryptonians, on the other hand, like Zod and Fiora, were largely disappointing. It's like watching poorly coded NPCs. It's no wonder Michael Shannon's head had such a bad time shooting this movie, who, by the way, has a pretty based opinion of a multiverse movies. But we still haven't talked about the giant elephant in the room, the visual effects. Plenty of times it will take you out of the movie. Like you're watching a cool action scene, you're invested in what's happening, then you get hit with freaking Matrix rubber doll animation. Or you get a dialogue scene between two characters, one of which is obviously a CG face and it's even a shot reverse shot. I mean, what the f? And in an age where the likes of Avatar 2 is able to push the boundaries when it comes to realism, it's just subpar. So if you haven't watched the movie, I suggest tapering your expectations when it comes to the CG. In fact, dial it down to 2004. Apparently, Warner Brothers wanted to cut their losses in order to somehow recoup some of the money from one of the most expensive movies of all time. Maybe gonna move the post-production budget to the cameos. Speaking of which, the cameos are totally oversold by the marketing. Unlike Across the Spider-Verse, which smoothly sprinkles in those callbacks, The Flash has that blink or you'll miss it once, which might be the reason they tell you ahead of time so you wouldn't miss it. So it comes as no surprise that they look rushed and unfinished. And while I admit that some scenes were kick-ass, especially one with a giant spider, it felt contrived. There's a version of Barry Allen out there that's mature and heroic, and sadly it isn't in the film. I'm sure there are some who miss that, but that's the sad reality of current day superheroes. They aren't just heroes for the sake of it. They have to be tragic, like Batman or Spider-Man, like the Marthas and the Bens of the world need to die. Otherwise they won't have the right stuff to be heroes. And you can kind of see the attempts to make this movie into an MCU clone as the entire thing settles on a tragic note, which is pretty good, I have to admit, but it gets undercut by really bad attempts at MCU humor. And so with an unintentional parallel with its atrocious post-credit scene, the film ends in the worst possible way, passed out with its face down on the ground.